I'm Philip. I'm just going to tell you a bit about the King's Maudsley Partnership. We're a group of clinicians and researchers who work with children and young people and families to answer and ask questions about mental well-being that really matter. We use our discoveries into the causes of mental health challenges to drive innovative new ways of helping locally, nationally, and internationally. And you can see in the picture there, this is our new home. This is the Pers Maudsley Centre, and it's an absolutely remarkable building. It's designed with and for children, and the facilities in this building are just superb, and it's lovely. Every floor has a garden. All the artwork was co-created and picked by children. It's going to be an absolutely great setting for children, young people, and families to receive care. Now, it's a nice building, not just for the way it looks, but also it's going to bring together clinicians and academics. And this is really important because usually, as you'll know, researchers are in universities and clinicians are in mental health care settings, and they don't really meet up that much. By bringing everyone together under one roof, we're going to be able to make sure that our research is even more driven by clinical needs and realities. And this co-placement of people will also help us translate our discoveries more quickly into new ways of helping. Next slide, please. And here's a few snapshots of the new home. You can see the classrooms to ensure children access the curriculum. It's the slide before. Could you go back one slide? There you go. There you go, that's the one. It's got classrooms, it's got a lovely garden there, and there's a room that's for kids who have sensory differences, just so that they feel welcome. Next slide, please. And this new home has one other additional neat feature. It's going to help us move towards the goal of ensuring that every kid has a chance to be part of research. And this is possible thanks to a grant that we received to build a new clinical research facility, which will occupy much of the first 2 floors of the building. And this facility will include really novel stuff like a massive virtual reality room where the ceiling, the floors and the walls are all virtual reality VR monitors. And there's some very cool, novel, child-friendly, very safe technologies that will allow us to look at the brain in even the youngest of kids very, very safely. And having all the research equipment in the same building where kids receive care will really help kids access research. And it will also help us capture some of the rich diversity of our South London home. So we're working with groups of young people, families and communities to ensure that we keep equity and access front and centre. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of our work. We cover a wide range of areas of mental health with particular strength in neurodevelopmental conditions, eating disorders, and looking at the effects of trauma. We've got experts who lead in the use of AI and digital technologies in child mental health. And we have research teams focused on equitable access to care. And we're increasing our focus on working with schools, stuff you'll hear about shortly. Next slide, please. Okay. Now, I work mainly in ADHD, and I thought I'd tell you just to give you a bit of a flavour of some of the work that we do. So ADHD, as you know, it's diagnosed in around 1 in 20 kids in the UK, around 1 in 40 adults. ADHD comes with its strengths. It comes with creativity, hyperfocus, adaptability, but it can also come with challenges. Now, we currently have lots of interventions that can help with these challenges, centred on medication options and behavioural interventions. But we have 2 big issues. First of all, we tend to run through these options in a rote manner, as we can't predict why some kids respond well to one option and not to another. So this means that kids and families can spend an awful lot of time trying to find the right treatment approach. And secondly, our treatment offers haven't really changed that much in over 30 years. Everyone agrees we badly need new ways of helping, particularly non-drug-based treatments. So how can we shift the needle? Next slide, please. Next slide. That's it. One way forward is to try to pinpoint the features that predict why a child responds well to one treatment and not another. And so what we do here is we look first to the most important part of the body in determining treatment response. We look to the brain. And here we're asking which brain features predict treatment response. The aim here is to match each child with ADHD to their optimal treatment based on their brain differences. Now, this would represent a really marked advance on our current time-consuming trial and error approach to treatment. Now, over the years, my group has used brain imaging data that safely acquired and captures brain function on over 10,000 kids. Now, that little picture there collapses 20 years of work into one picture. And basically, we've found, and many others have found this too, that there are several distinct neural patterns or differences that are very, very subtly different in kids with ADHD. And we see three of these different brain patterns here. Here you're looking at the brain from above. The little dots represent different parts of the brain, and those little joined up dots show where those connections, the way the brain's talking to itself, is very subtly different in some kids, not all kids, but some kids with ADHD. But the next question we asked is, do these brain patterns predict ADHD treatment response? Do different brain patterns predict different response? And they did to a bit. So for example, if you look at the one at the top in the blue, we found that that pattern, that's the brain network that's important for controlling to attention, was associated with how well a kid responds to psychostimulant medication such as methylphenidate. Now we're looking at, does another brain pattern, the one in green or the one in red, do they predict response to other treatments that we have or interventions that we have for ADHD, such as atomoxetine, which is another medication called Strattera, or behavioral non-drug treatment. By taking this approach, by looking at the brain, looking at how it's tied to treatment, we hope to be able to get the right treatment to the right child more quickly. Next slide, please. Now, we might be able to tailor treatment not just based on the brain, but also on a child's cognitive strengths and weaknesses. Now, we know there's not just one cognitive difference in all kids with ADHD. Variability lies at the core. And you can see that here. Now, in this little graph, along the top is a list of cognitive skills that can be different in those with ADHD. So response inhibitions, the ability to stop yourself from doing something when it's no longer appropriate, it's kind of impulsivity. Working memories, the ability to remember things, and so on. The two lines represent two kids, Peter's in red, Lucy's in blue. And as you can see, they both have ADHD, but their profiles are different. And in this graph, average performance is shown in the little green dot. Now, there are, as you can see here, Peter, for example, might struggle a wee bit with response inhibition, whereas Lucy's fine at it, whereas the reverse holds true for working memory. Now, there's a vast number of apps and games that try to improve cognitive skills for those with ADHD, and nearly all of them target the skill of working memory. Now, as you can guess, this might be quite useful for Lucy, because she's not great at this, she struggles with her working memory, but it's very unlikely to help Peter much. He's already quite good at it. So to overcome this, we developed with some colleagues a suite of cognitive smart games. Each one targets one of the cognitive skills listed on the top of the graph there. The games are fun and they're all delivered in virtual reality, and using AI techniques, the games respond to a kid's profile. They get more training in a weak area and less in a strong area. And now if you just click onto the next slide and then just start the little movie, it'll show you what the games are like. Oh, do you have any sound? Is there a sound? Oh, it's probably on me, isn't it? Don't worry. This is a child. So basically the child was told, here's a series of buttons, repeat them, but repeat them backwards. This is a sort of memory task, okay? Now in this game, the child here is told to slice some objects, but not others. And this is it's a fun game, it's kind of like Slicer, but the kid had, by hitting some objects and not the other, it's a very, very fine controlled task of what we call response inhibition. Next slide, please. Now, we've already completed a pilot study of this. The kids do these games for about 6 weeks or so, and we find that after doing them, they improve cognitive skills in a way that mattered to the kids, and they reduced the amount of hassle and impairment that was tied to symptoms of inattention. And the next phase is to take this to a bigger trial to show it's effective. Next slide, please. And this is only one of several studies ongoing at KMP, with whole teams of individuals who are looking at very safe forms of fine-tuning brain signals using magnetic fields or noise stimulation. And many others at the department are looking at how digital interventions can best be used to help families and schools. Next slide, please. Now, I'm going to end by going back to where I started and talk about the importance of broadening participation in clinical research. Now, a really major issue here is the underrepresentation of certain groups, particularly ethnic groups, in genetics. Also, most neuroscience like mine relies heavily on brain mapping using MRI. Now, MRI is great, I love it, but it involves lying very still for very long periods of time in a loud, noisy tube, and many kids simply can't do this, especially those who move a lot, who are very anxious, or have sensory differences. These kids are missing from our science and will likely miss out on all of the advances I've just talked about. If you just click the button. So at KMP, we ordered to fill these gaps by using child-friendly technologies. We're using 3 imaging modalities, all use mobile caps like the one you can see there. They allow a kid to move while still mapping their brain activity. And if you just click, just keep clicking. Yeah, you can see it gives you brain maps that have got great, they really pinpoint where in the brain things are happening, and those little squiggly lines show exactly when things are happening. This sort of accessibility will help us include the kids who are often missing from research. And we're working to ensure we capture the diversity of our home. This is partly done through the school's research network, which you're going to hear about shortly. And on that note, I'm going to hand over to the next speaker, Dr. Irene Skler, who's a clinical psychologist at King's Maudsley Partnership, and she's going to tell us about the really cool Discover project. Irene.
Oops. Hi, everybody. It's really good to be here, and thank you very much, everybody, for including me in the session. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I lead a school-based service called Discover. I am based in the national and specialist CAMS part of our organisation and have been very involved in what's called the King's Maudsley Partnership in devising and also evaluating our programme. So I'm going to ask for the slides to be moved on, if you could do that for me. Just to say that Discover is designed for 16 to 18-year-olds specifically, and those with anxiety and depression kind of problems. These are the most common mental health difficulties. 16 to 18-year-olds are those who are at greatest need in the childhood population. And there are many barriers, we know, for young people generally in accessing help, and particularly for this age group. So the Discover programme was designed to try to overcome those barriers and reach out. I'm going to talk to you about the evidence base that we've developed with the help of research colleagues at King's, a quick comment about scalability, rollout plans for Discover, and I'll end with some links for you for further information. So it's going to be quite a breeze through a lot of work that's been undertaken over the years. Next slide, please. Just the key information I wanted to impart is that Discover was co-produced with sets of teenage advisors, looking at the design, the content, the style that we would use. And we continue all the way through to be working with young people to develop and refine our work and to respond to feedback. Over 6,000 sixth formers have accessed Discover in London and South East England schools since our first pilots in 2013. We're currently working in around 30 schools ourselves as a team, and very actively involved with a set of different schools. The program that we developed is based on cognitive behavior therapy. It's manualized, it's all prescribed. It offers young people who come forward a group workshop day at school, plus a couple of individual sessions. Within that program, the various stages, there's inbuilt evaluation and inbuilt structures for young people to provide their views and feedback. Next slide, please. We call it How to Manage Stress and Worry. The style and aim of the work, the intervention, is to empower young people to bring about change. And it's deliberately non-diagnostic to tackle one of the barriers we know to accessing help around mental health stigma. We're very attentive to diversity and social context in all the schools in which we work. We use a self-referral system for young people to sign up in school. In other words, there are no referral forms. There's no parental consent required because they're over 16, and we don't operate with any wait lists. So really, we come in, we respond, and young people can get their help almost as soon as they hear about us. The content has very carefully been aligned with the social, academic, and developmental needs of this age group, and we continue to keep in touch with any teenage shifts of interest and focus to keep it up to date. We've got inbuilt risk management. That's very important, given that a lot of the young people who come forward have really complex problems that perhaps have never been identified before. And we tailor some elements of the programme as needed to support those with neurodiversity challenges. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is just an overview of the toolkit that we present to young people for them to choose what would be helpful to them. And we teach each of these techniques in a lively kind of way during the workshop. And the techniques are there to help them to change thought patterns, behavior patterns, and ways of calming their body sensations, all of which are proven to deal with anxiety and low mood kind of difficulties. Next slide, please. One thing that's unique to us is that we use a set of peer role models, and they appear throughout the workshop day in a set of filmed vignettes. And this one is about the process of thinking differently, a technique called thought challenging, and it's set in a real world context where two young men are playing a game on screen while applying this technique to help one of them to deal with a difficulty. That's just a little example. We haven't got time for others. And the next slide, please. I've just ended this description of the programme with a couple of comments very recently from a programme that we've been running in a school. I'll just give you 30 seconds to quickly read these. Obviously, I've chosen very nice ones, but you can see that there's some support for not just learning techniques, becoming more hopeful and maybe more motivated, both for sixth form and in their lives, and maybe looking at self differently, putting things into perspective, not feeling alone with the difficulty. All very important aspects. Next slide, please. Now, I'm just going to very quickly, before I finish, give you an outline of the excellent partnership we've had with our research colleagues at King's and at other universities. The BEST trial was led by Dr. June Brown, who inspired Discover's development right at the beginning. The purpose of the BEST trial, which is an RCT, was to investigate the effectiveness of Discover in improving young people's mental health. Really important test of effectiveness. We drew in 900 students, a massive sample, 57 schools in 4 UK regions. We trained and supervised a group of people called education mental health professionals. So sorry, I can't quite answer that just at the moment. I'll deal with that in a minute. And 51 of those young EMHPs worked in their schools to deliver Discover. Follow-up, both at 3 and 6 months, to our delight, showed that Discover was proven to be both clinically and cost effective, which is all absolutely brilliant and supports our kind of more basic evaluation that we had been doing. And the next slide, please. Thank you. Just thinking about the future, we have another very important bit of data analysis awaiting from the BEST trial, which is a 12-month and 24-month follow-up of mental health outcomes. Now, the results can't be publicised yet, but they're going to be published very soon in the next few months, so do look out for these. And then the other very big important question here is how, given that this is an effective intervention, how can we make sure that every young person in this age group in every school can have access to Discover? We're now in a new study called the DI study, a Discover implementation study, and that's got two main aims: exploring how can we embed Discover into real-world mental health in schools teams, and we're doing that work in 6 UK sites to learn how we can roll out from there. And another part of rollout is how can we embed the training of Discover to EMHPs within their national training curriculums. And we're doing that work in 3 HEI sites, university sites, and that work is just getting underway. So all very exciting work. And finally, just wanted to point to our ideas about the future. We were developing something called Train the Trainer, an infrastructure system where we can sustain that rollout by working out how we can get our training to as many staff as possible so that they can continue to deliver Discover in their services. And we're also beginning to think about creating and testing and evaluating new versions of Discover for other staff, other contexts, other age groups, and other youth needs. So I'm going to finish with that slide with information that you can access from our website in SLAM, from the King's website for BEST, and the BEST study itself has got its own website. Thank you all very much. I know there's some questions and maybe we can hold them for later on if that's all right. Thank you.
Hello, I'm joining from my colleague's Zoom because my computer just crashed, so hopefully you can all see and hear me. My name is Jackie Phillips-Owen. Can we have the next slide, please? So I'm Jackie Phillips-Owen. I'm a consultant child and adolescent psychiatrist, and I lead the Maudsley Education Consultation Service. So we refer to that as MECS, and you can see our logo in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. So MECS started out in 2022. It was at the time a consultation service for schools in responding to the pandemic and developing a whole school approach to address the rising levels of mental distress in students. Next slide, please. And we've developed considerably over the last 3 years. We have a very active collaboration with Haberdashers' Academy Trust South and also the Harris Federation, other schools and other academy trusts, but these are the main two that we've been working with. And we've been thinking together with these school networks about how to meet that increasing mental health need in schools and boost student resilience. So today I'm going to tell you about two of our main project strands, the School Resilience Project and the School Mental Health Innovation Network. And then I'm going to introduce one of our student ambassadors, Maya, who has recently graduated from one of the schools we've been working with. Next slide, please. So to start with the School Resilience Project. So the MEC School Resilience Project is very much a grassroots project in the sense that we go to individual schools and we work with them to develop an evidence-driven whole school approach to mental health and well-being. And the way we do that is through a process that very much mirrors the SEN graduated response process that teachers are already very familiar with. So we go through a cycle of assess, plan, do, review. In the assess phase, we roll out a survey across the school community. So that's parents and students. And that survey is online. It's looking at mental health and well-being, so looking at mental health symptoms. But as many people on this call will already know, if you roll out a survey and ask people to fill it out and they don't know what it's for or why you're doing it, you won't get very many responses. So an essential component of this process is parent and student engagement. And for that reason, we have mental health ambassadors like Maya, who you'll meet later, but we also go to assemblies and parents' evenings and engage with parents and students in other ways. And that gets our response rates very, very high. We then move to focus groups. So we take the results of the survey, we put them in a palatable form, and we show them to parents, students, and staff and ask them to interpret them. We ask them why it appears that year 10 in one particular school seems to be struggling a lot with anxiety, or why year 6 are talking about being bullied, and what might be driving that, and what sorts of issues might exist in the school community that could be addressed to ameliorate that. We create a school report, which we share with the senior school leaders, and we work with them to set priorities, because the priorities need to be things that they feel they can affect change upon. We suggest resources and interventions, but it's ultimately down to the school to decide what they want to do, and that's the next phase, do. We link them with community resources that might help. They might implement the changes themselves within the school using tried and tested methods that they already have, or they might decide that they want to bring in, for example, the Discover programme that Irene Sclair has just been talking about if they have an issue with anxiety and low mood in sixth form. They get support and guidance from our team. And if they like, we will perform a review of what the school has done. So that looks at assessing the impact of interventions by doing another survey. And we adapt our approach. So some schools would like us to look at the entire school again. Other schools would like us to focus on a particular year group, like year 6 moving into year 7, to test their transition interventions, for example. Next slide, please. So currently the School Resilience Project is in 6 schools. By the end of 2025, we hope we'll have reached 4,000 students and the equivalent number of parents. It's been applied across 3 multi-academy trusts, although not every school in each trust. Next slide, please. So this is the My Journey survey to give you an idea of the survey platform that we're using. So this is what the students and the parents would fill out. It assesses generalized and social anxiety, mood, school environment and bullying and well-being using validated measures. It's anonymous until you get to a help-seeking questionnaire where the students can, or the parents, can ask their school, or in some cases, the mental health support team, for help with a mental health or other issue. And they can de-anonymize themselves and get a response within a prescribed amount of time. Next slide, please. So we take those responses from the survey and we link them with student characteristics like sex, ethnicity, attendance, SEND status, and pupil premium. And we also compare the demographics of the parents, rather the demographics of the students, but the parents, to see that we're making that we're engaging a representative proportion of each part of the school. Next slide, please. This is an example of the sort of result that we'd be showing to the students, parents, and staff. So this is the short mood and feelings questionnaire. And we'd be asking each group what they think is, why they think, for example, year 7 seems to be doing so much better than the other year groups in terms of their mood, and why years 9 and 10, for example, seem to be having more high-range mental health symptoms than the other year groups. And we'd get insights from the focus groups. So you can see in the box the sorts of explanations that people offer to help think through why these symptoms might be endorsed by the different year groups. Next slide, please. And from that, the school can decide what they want to do. So one school wanted to address issues raised like cyberbullying, puberty, and social media as issues for well-being by putting into changes into their PHSE and pastoral curriculum. In another school, the students spoke about not knowing where to get support, so they implemented clearer signposting of the safeguarding teams. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to move on to the School Mental Health Innovation Network. So this is in opposition, but also complementary to the School Resilience Project, because the School Mental Health Innovation Network is very broad. It's not looking at individuals, it's looking at all of the schools in South London, or at least that's the ambition. We're forming this network at the moment. And we're forming it in collaboration with other school health research networks in the UK. So there's the SHINE network in Scotland that covers all of the Scottish schools. And then there's the Welsh School Health Research Network covering all the schools in Wales. But we're also hoping to get insights and advice from other school networks like BeWell, which functions in Greater Manchester and beyond, and the South West School Health Research Network in Bristol and beyond. The aim of these networks, ours included, is to gather health and well-being data from students, facilitate co-production of research, allocate resources effectively to schools, and influence national policy and strategy. Next slide, please. So what would a South London model look like? Next slide, please. And keep going. Okay, so in our South London model, we want to co-develop with our local community, because growing up in South London is going to be very different to growing up in Scotland or Wales or Manchester. And we want to understand what the specific challenges are for our community. Having said that, we're going to have a core of the survey, which is identical to the other surveys, so that we can cross-reference and benchmark nationally. So we've started with asking our local community what they care about the most. Next slide, please. Because we're a mental health trust, we're also very keen on creating strong links with NHS services like CAMHS and mental health support teams. That includes developing new clinical pathways that help young people access specialist support, finding ways to use our limited resources most effectively for those who need it, and to understand what kind of resources are needed by particular schools, and identify and target interventions that using the data that we've collected to make sure we do that properly. Next slide, please. So that there's something in this for schools. In fact, there's quite a lot in this for schools, because it's not just about measuring schools, it's also about setting up communities of practice. So highlighting good practice, sharing learning with other schools, and together with researchers and clinicians, developing new approaches to identify the gaps and address them. Next slide, please. We want to make this as sustainable as possible. So that means using resources that already exist and helping schools make the most of what's already available. And currently there's no clear way to identify what schools need what interventions or what support. So we're hoping that using this network, we can have more effective ways of trying to understand that, but also more effective ways of schools, young people and staff and parents feeding in. Next slide, please. So to try and link the ambitions for the School Mental Health Innovation Network to the School Resilience Project, you can see that the School Mental Health Innovation Network is very all-encompassing in orange. It involves a mental health survey administered to all South London schools. That's the ambition, and the linkage of mental health data from that survey to education data. And that allows us to form a process to identify the more vulnerable schools. That means that we can think about how to deploy services more efficiently towards groups of students or geographical clusters of schools that seem to be having the most difficulty. Then the School Resilience Project, the ambition is that would come in to help better understand the factors at play in the schools that have been identified as more vulnerable. So let's say the 5 to 10% of schools that have the greatest mental health needs. And then using the information from the School Resilience Project, trying to understand the themes and what's driving some of the difficulties, it's possible to have evidence-led targeted support, bringing in interventions like Discover or the other interventions that we have in South London in the Maudsley and King's Maudsley partnership. But we have also worked with organisations like Place to Be, who have used the insights from the School Resilience Project to drive forward what they're doing in their schools. New slide, please. So as part of the School Mental Health Innovation Network, I mentioned that we use the survey to address the concerns of school communities. Next slide. We also have students, parents and staff help us understand what drives mental ill health in the local area. Next slide. And we also use the data, but also the insights to help develop new interventions or deploy really good existing interventions. Next slide, please. So now I'd like to introduce Maya, who's a student ambassador in our programs. She's now at university, and she will tell you a little bit about what it was like working with us, and also some other interesting insights that she's had about the program.
Good evening, everyone. I hope that you can see me and hear me well. As Dr. Jackie said, my name is Maya, and I was a student ambassador and took part in the project. So the first question I will be answering for you is how I found having the MEX team work in my school. I thought it was quite interesting. I was introduced to it by my group of friends that I had at the school, and I was interested in the work they were doing because usually when it came to dealing with mental health in our schools, the approach wouldn't necessarily heavily include outside institutions, if I can say it. Organizations, I think, would be better. It would usually be maybe a one-time workshop or a teacher-led assembly. So I thought it was better than something we had experienced before, and it was quite impactful. And I also liked that it was directed and adapted to all of the different year groups. So they would adapt it to sixth form, they would adapt it to the year 8 students, each one would receive an assembly. And impacting our school experience, personally, I think being able to have students involved in the project, particularly being an ex-sixth form student, I wasn't seeing much more of the work in the lower school, but in the sixth form, I found more students were interested in joining and creating teams to help deal with mental health in our schools. I think it was a little bit of an eye-opener, and I saw that more people were reaching out for support in my year group, at least. And I think I also quite liked how the people like Jackie and Noor and Will and other people in the organization were willing to have us also look at the data, which I think is important because you can do research on a group of people, but understanding the trends in the data, I think, is equally important to involve some people who took part in that research to look at why things may be expected or unexpected. And my vision for young people's mental health services, I think my first proper experience with the mental health services was when I myself was seeking help at the time while I was at the school, not yet advanced to the sixth form level. And I noticed a few flaws with the way that staff would interact and the way that the amount of people one would encounter and repeat a story to, and the length of a waiting list, which I never actually completed, having passed the age. And I think that is one huge thing that should improve. I think the interpersonal relationship, the relationship between the young persons seeking help and staff members, I think could be stronger in 2 ways. Number one, I think that maybe the approach taken by many of the people I met were not the best in terms of making the young person feel empowered and responsible and involved. And I think number 2, it is demoralizing to meet many different people and re-explain one case over and over again. I think it would have been better if there was more of where there was one person who would be dedicated, or at least see more often the one person seeking help. I think it's more of an opportunity to create a stronger bond, to create more trust if you see the same person. There's more familiarity there. And the slide mentions that I would like to become a psychiatrist. So that is one of the reasons I'm interested in psychiatry, because of my own experiences. But growing up, I always had this empathy and compassion within me for people who would be struggling mentally anyways, whether I was the one struggling or not. I always felt drawn and felt as though my characteristics were good in terms of helping people and advising other people, and maturing as well definitely aligns with my values as a Christian, having a lot of love for people and wanting to help them and lead them to have a better, abundant life. And so those three things factor into why I would like to become a psychologist. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Maya. Great to see you again. Oh, look at that. Lots of hearts. Isn't that sweet? Okay. Could we have the next slide, please? Ah, I think there was one before that. No? Oh, maybe it got taken out. Never mind, that's fine. So I think we're ready for questions.
Thank you so much, everyone. That's really fascinating, and I think it's really interesting to see the work you're doing and how the research is really informing the practice space, particularly in the last example as well. Like, that's the transitions from schools, about what's happening in schools and how can we do something about it. And thank you so much, Maya, as well. We've had a couple of questions in the chat specifically about the Discover program, which had been answered by Irene, but we had one about MEX, which is, has there been any proposal to look at outcomes for education staff? So, for example, competence or confidence around mental health.
Yeah, there's certainly a desire to do that, but you know, when you're trying to eat an elephant, you have to do it in chunks. So I've probably got that metaphor slightly wrong, but anyway, you know what I mean. So yeah, we want to do that, and we're taking it step by step, but certainly that's on the agenda, and it will hopefully end up being part of the School Mental Health Innovation Network. At the moment, we're looking at staff knowledge and ideas in different ways. We have a school staff survey, which hasn't yet been aligned with the School Mental Health Innovation Network, but we hope it will be.
Great. Thank you, Jacqueline. And just a follow-up question, is the network restricted by geography?
At the moment, we're looking at South London. So yes, that aspect of the network is restricted by geography, but we do have a CAMS digital lab, and I know that they're quite keen to extend, and that isn't necessarily based on geography.
Thank you.